technology. One thing I will say about mistakes is we have to create environments for our team members where they're free to make mistakes. They don't feel like making mistakes is a problem. That's when that real creativity comes. Now, you can't make those catastrophic mistakes that will bring the organization down to a screeching halt. And then the other thing is we've got to learn from our mistakes. We call that, and that's a principle we call failing forward.
And now a word from our sponsor, ETS Solutions.
Hello, this is Jim Beard with ETS Solutions. Thanks for checking out our new podcast series, CIO Insights, where we get a little bit more personal with our guests. We talk about their careers, we talk about their personal interests, and we even ask them to give a little bit of advice to those who are still coming up the ranks. For over 20 years now, ETS has been providing award-winning technology consulting services. Based on our 5 core values of faith, family, community service, client experience, and trust, we're able to offer consulting services to just about every vertical. And our services cover everything from edge computing and cloud services to voice and data to cybersecurity and project management. Whatever your technology needs are, we can help. We invite you to check out the link below or call the number below to find out more about ETS and where we can fit into your technology stack. Enjoy the podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of CIO Insights podcast by ETS Solutions. This podcast was intentionally designed to tell the stories of CIOs in a way that provides value, in a way that gives practical action items for you to take away, whether you're new to the technology industry or whether you've been in it for 20 years. And today we have not one, but 2 special guests, and this is our part 2. I guess the part 1 is not supposed to touch the mainstream because we don't have it, but I'm glad to have these guys back. Why don't you tell them, introduce yourselves, Gary Brantley and Brian Benn.
Yeah, Gary Brantley. I've been a CIO for quite some time, and just extremely happy to be here and happy to do a podcast. I think this is the first podcast I've done with someone else, and it couldn't have been a better person than yours truly.
Well, I'm Brian Benn. I'm the CIO of the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta. I'm excited to be here with such a leader, a dynamic leader like Gary, and Christian's also great and up and coming leader. So I'm excited to be here this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. And this is a special episode because we're live at Chateau Elan for the Servant Technology Concilium. And Gary is actually our keynote speaker tonight for dinner. So I know we're all excited for that. But let's get right into it. Tell the audience kind of the path that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, it was a interesting path, but it wasn't one that was really that special. I've been in technology from the start, right? So I've spent quite a bit of time, as it relates to just really honing this craft. I think I started out. It's been almost 17, 18 years since I've been in the C-suite, and so I remember going to college, and I remember telling my dad that I really wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. But I remember telling him that I wanted to get into technology, and I took my first technology course, and I dropped out. I didn't know how to program. I didn't have that in high school. It was the craziest thing. And so I took a semester off to read about logic, and I taught myself how to do that. And if you know anything about college, once you got to like C++ and C, that was like the weed out class, right? So, from there on, I got an opportunity to work with IBM, and that's really how everything got started. And they taught me how to dress, taught me how to behave, all those type things and really took me under their belt. And today is, 25 years later, I'm here.
That's awesome, man. That's amazing. What about you, Brian? What was your path?
Well, I was always interested in computers, always interested in technology. Been playing with these things. I'll probably date myself since the TRS-80, the Commodore 64. I was always kind of tinkering. Did computer science and math in undergrad, and got an opportunity to work with NASA while I was in school, and then starting out of college, was working with NASA for a few years and worked with some of the brightest people around, and that just kind of helped catapult my career. I ended up with some of the big Fortune 500 companies, and then landed with the Housing Authority probably I think 2012. So been there for the last 8 years. Had a stint away, but been in IT leadership. Cut my teeth there. Kind of look at leaders like Gary, and that definitely is. Helps with in terms of providing motivation and impetus, seeing that success and the leadership and what have you. So
yeah, I love that, and both of you guys have amazing stories. So this is this is cool that y'all are where y'all are. But what are some of the resources that both of you have utilized to kind of get to this position?
Yeah, so I like to read a lot. Okay. So even a few minutes ago, I was reading a book by John Maxwell. I feel like that knowledge is power, man. I learned that at a very young age, and it allows. One of the things that I picked up, you hear it a lot now, but really like training myself to learn and then unlearn, learn and then unlearn, which is why I've been in several different industries. There's this stereotype that if you're in finance or in banking that you can't be in something else. And I think the biggest thing is adaptability, right? Can you change or can you be changed? And so I've been in an education environment. I've been with big firm, big organizations like IBM. You won't remember MCI WorldCom. That's probably past your time. But just Verizon is pretty much what they were one of the largest long distance or the largest long distance carrier in the world. And it'd be a good education for you to go check them out. But at the same time, from government to learning how airports operate, to learning how water operates, all those are different dynamics. And now I'm in the construction and home building industry. And so I think it says something for how people try to place you in a lane, right? They say if you're in government, you can't go to corporate. That's a lie. I went from corporate to government back to corporate, all right? I mean, you hear people say that, or this company's much bigger. You can't know. I've been in small companies, I've been in large companies. So, I just think being able to adapt to environments and being able to unlearn and relearn and train yourself and adapt is something that I've been really studying.
Yeah, so was there ever like fear of the unknown going into new territories? And if so, like how do you battle that?
It's always fear. If you're not fear, I remember my uncle, and he's not living a day. He had some struggles growing up. He told me one thing. He spent some time in prison, but one of the things that he said to me was that the most dangerous person in prison is a person that is scared, right? Wow. So I take fear everywhere I go. It makes you, if you get comfortable, it's a problem. So I always walk into situations uncomfortable, but calm and calm demeanor. But I think that keeps you on your toes. It keeps you aware, and so that's to answer your question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because even just me, like as a young guy, and thinking about my peers, like fear is almost paralyzing in some situations. So to hear that from you, like fear, is gonna be present no matter what, but learning how to be comfortable with it.
Step through
it. That's dope, man. So what about you, Brian? What are some
some things that some points. One point that Gary made was he referenced reading and learning. So you've always got to continue to learn, especially in technology, any discipline really. But technology is so dynamic; it's changing constantly. So you've got to stay abreast of the trends. Part of that learning means you've got to have good people around you, and you've got to have good resources that you can rely on, basically that you can learn from, and that you can also mentor. And speaking about mentorship, it's good to have we should all have a mentor and a sponsor. A mentor may or may not be in that same discipline, but they'll give you some of the nuances and some of the tricks you need to achieve. And then at the same time, a sponsor is going to be the one that kind of speaks up for you when you're not in the room, because a lot of those conversations and decisions are made when you're not in the room. So one thing we've learned in this journey is the need for a mentor and the need for a sponsor. And it also helps you, kind of actuates you in terms of giving back and trying to make sure you're giving that back. But again, I would stress continuing to learn, whether that's reading, whether that's going online, there's so much material there, or whether that's learning from people or learning from your mistakes.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to be able to give practical action items, which y'all have been giving, but I want to ask you this. What are maybe 2 or 3 book recommendations that you would give to someone who's coming up the ranks and who, want to be in you guys' seats one day?
Man, you probably don't, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about this later, right? But I love the 48 Laws of Power. I was looking at it a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, I almost felt bad for reading it, because it said, this book has been a godsend for those who are celebrities and those who have been in prison. I'm like, hold on for a second, what am I reading, right? So, but at the same time, I've read, it just depends on the moment and what you're dealing with. Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath, I've always felt like I've been an underdog. Always felt like I've had to really work. People don't see it, but to work for things that I have. So just sometimes I get books for the moment. Right now I'm reading a book called Leadership by John Maxwell. It's really good. It talks about some of the things I was just talking about adapting. Those types of areas. So I think that, if we could sit here all day and talk about all of the books that I've gone through, but, I just, at the end of the day, I really tend to gravitate towards books that kind of really tie to the situations that I'm going into at that particular time. So, yeah.
A couple books that definitely come to my mind. A couple authors, really. Simon Sinek, and What's Your Why? I mean, what's motivating you? Why you're here? Another book, and I don't remember the authors right now, but the book is Crucial Conversations, and it kind of helps you in terms of how do you have those crucial conversations that you have to have. And then I remember the one, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I remember my father put me on that as a teenager, so that was a good book. And I'd be remiss if we didn't plug, we got an author right here in our midst, and I'd be remiss if we didn't plug Gary's book about organizational change. And I read that, and that's such an easy read. I read that in a night, literally. I think it was a Thanksgiving weekend when he sent it to me, and I read it. So yeah, I mean, there's so much good material out there. As long as you're hungry and you want to learn, you will find something. There are books about leadership. There are books, like Gary said, specific to the situation that you're dealing with. So it's just upon you. It's incumbent upon you to go and get those resources and fill yourself.
That's awesome. Both of y'all gave great recommendations. I love.
Let me add one.
Yeah, go ahead.
The one extra one is like, what you do is who you are.
That's
it's called the author is slipping my mind right now, is What You Do Is Who You Are. And it talks about how your habits, the habits that you've established, is really what you become. And so it's a pretty interesting book, and it ties in practical type daily things to rap artists. It's the craziest thing ever, but you should check it out. It's called, I think his name is Benn. Yeah, Benn, I think is his name. He's a prominent investor, but it's a good book.
Yeah, he's with Anderson and Horowitz, right?
Yeah.
So he's been reading.
Yeah, I mean, the Crucial Conversations book, man, that's a gem that many people don't know about. But I love that book. I actually did a whole podcast episode on it a few months back, just the power of Crucial Conversations. So that's good. And so now I want to get to the hard times and then the good times, right? So talk about one of your failures or mistakes that you've experienced throughout your career that you had to battle through, and then what did you learn from it?
So I've had technical mistakes. So, and I'll start there. Technical mistakes is like, I've taken down global organizations for a few minutes and cost them, millions of dollars, man. And I'll say this, and this is in my engineering days. one of the things that, I made sure that the bad news rose quickly. And I took ownership about it. A lot of times when things go wrong, people don't want to tell, or they don't want to bring them forward. I brought it forward, and in the end was rewarded for it, for bringing and having those tough conversations and really taking ownership of it and working to get it done. It was a crucial moment and a lesson for me that you can be judged by how you handle situations and how you go through things and bring them back up. So that was one thing. The other thing is I continue to make mistakes when it comes to learning people, right? I'm in leadership, and people, it's a hard road, and it's constantly a learning process, and you make mistakes. Are you open to admitting that you do? And are you willing to look at yourself to fix it to be better? And I think that, it's a lot of things that I could have done better, and I look back at a lot of situations and really try to improve as I go forward.
Well, as I came up as a developer, so it's one of the things we're cowboys, and we feel that we can fix everything. So one thing I had to learn along the way is to use other resources around me, and so I sometimes was make that mistake of like, look, I can fix this. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to get it done. I don't need any help. So think smart. Use those resources around you. One thing I will say about mistakes is, we have to create environments for our team members where they're free to make mistakes. They don't feel like making mistakes is a problem. That's when that real creativity comes. Now, you can't make those catastrophic mistakes that will bring the organization down to a screeching halt. And then the other thing is, we've got to learn from our mistakes. We call that, and that's a principle we call failing forward. So you can't make those catastrophic mistakes, or you can't continue to make the same mistakes, and then that borders on insanity. So we've got to grow from those things. But once we understand that those mistakes are part of life, if you're not making mistakes, you're really not trying. And then so that's when your creative juices are really going to flow, when you feel like you're in an environment when you're free to make those mistakes and you're learning and growing. And we continue to make them. And even like Gary said, we make mistakes with people. Judging people is hard all the time. So there's several places where we're going to continue to make mistakes. We just want to learn from them, grow from them, and then move forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I always love that question. And there's this African proverb that I live by, and it says, wise men learn from other people's mistakes, smart men learn from their own mistakes, and stupid men never learn. So I love that you mentioned just learning from I love you mentioned learning from mistakes, and then just hearing you guys talk about it is super cool. And so as we wrap up here, I want you guys to both give one piece of wisdom to someone. Let's say there's a person who is about to graduate college, like Z, who's behind the camera, and they want to become a leader, maybe not a CIO, but a CEO, a COO, just some type of leadership role, and they don't really know what to do, where to go. What would you tell them?
When you find that person, and it took me quite a bit of time to find that person, but one of the things that I say that's extremely important is open up your mouth and communicate what you want out of life and what you want out of your career. Some of the people that even that I've been with, someone would say, well, why he gravitates towards him. I could have a team of 400 people, and one person came to me and said, this is what I want. Others expect you to come to them, and it doesn't work that way. You have to be extremely passionate and vocal about what you want out of your career and what you want out of life. And I think that's the start. A lot of times people sit back and expect someone to pick them out. It does not work that way. Trust me. We have so many things that are happening, and I think that's been never be intimidated or manipulated. Those types of things are things that have been taught to me that have stuck with me. So that's what I would say. Be vocal, be clear, and even if you really don't know, allow someone to know that you want to be in leadership, that you want to be a CIO one day, and then that person can work with you to get you where you need to go.
Well, I love what Gary said. I mean, closed mouths don't get fed, right? But the other thing, I'll go back to what I said about mentorship and sponsorship, and specifically mentorship. It's important that we find people. Well, first you got to know what you want before you can even communicate it. So you have to make sure you find your niche and you know what you want to do. And even as you're learning that, it's good to have a mentor. And you're never too old to have a mentor. That mentor does not have to be in the same discipline. It just has to be somebody that's been successful and that can lead you and can point you to those mistakes and those blind spots that you may have. I would even say, look, do a SWOT analysis of yourself. See yourself as, I would see myself as Corporation Brian. I would get my strengths and weaknesses, my opportunities, my threats, and I would go through these things and try to see what I can immediately affect. Like those strengths and weaknesses I can immediately affect. So I would really, again, look at mentorship and understand that, that I can learn and I can grow and be willing to do that and be willing to have those difficult conversations about things you need to clean up and improve about yourself. So be leadable and teachable.
Awesome. That's amazing. That's amazing. And so we're going to wrap up with this, with the Fab Five. But instead of doing 5 questions, we're going to do 3. And so who wants to go first?
Brian.
Brian. All right, Brian, you ready? Fab 3, I would say. So the first question, if you could have one superpower, what would it be and why?
It would be to be able to teleport myself to wherever I want to go, time travel, not necessarily time travel, but look, if I wanted to just be on the shores of the most beautiful country, Trinidad, and the most beautiful country in the world right now, I could just go there. It's just like that. And I guess the reason why is just because just the flexibility. I wouldn't have to sit in line I wouldn't have to go through the counter, I wouldn't have to get the clear pass. I would just be where I wanted to be. So teleportation would be good.
Cool. And number 2, if you could have dinner with one person, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
My pops. My pops, who passed not too long ago. He was an excellent mentor for me. And if I could just see him again and have an opportunity to talk with him and speak with him and share some of my successes with him and failures with him, it would just be a blessing for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, last question. What is one thing that you wish you would have known at the beginning of your career?
That everybody adds value, that everybody that you work with on some level, now some people make it difficult to find that value, but everybody, if I'm a good leader, I can find that value in everybody, in every resource, and just that everybody at some level adds some type of value.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Gary, your turn. Number 1, first question, if you could have one.
It's all prepared now.
Yeah. First question, one superpower, what would it be and why?
I talked about being invisible, but I want to put a caveat to that, right? With the ability to time travel. I would love to be able to go back, meet family members, meet people that preceded me, and also be able to go forward to see what the future holds, all right? Yeah, so I got it all in one. Yeah.
That's dope. And number 2, if you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Man, it's always my dad. You know, I get knowledge from him, and just like Brian said, it's no better. I mean, he helped create me, so, you know, it's really good. You can find out a lot about yourself, even the good things and the bad things, right? So it's always a good opportunity to talk to him. Yep.
Awesome. And last one, if you could, what's the one thing that you wish you would have known at the beginning of your career?
That I just would have listened more. I think listening is a skill set that takes time. And, you know, you find out a lot about things that way. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Gary and Brian, thank y'all for joining me again for round 2, and I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for watching. See you all on the next episode of the CIO Insights Podcast by ETS Solutions.
Woo, woo!